Hey guys, we have a new series starting. We are going to be playing a game with early age Xibalba. This is going to be the first game I have played on my custom map that I made, Lucid's Atlas. So we're going to be figuring out a lot of the balance issues with that map. So it'll be kind of interesting to see. And I'll probably be updating the map based on feedback from this game, feedback from other people that have played with it. I'm probably gonna avoid some of the theory crafting feedback, where it's just like, I don't like this. I'm gonna be much more biased towards listening to feedback from people that have actually played it in a game. But anyway, this overview is going to be for Xibalba. And Xibalba is an interesting bird in that it was one of my favorite nations in Dominions 4. And there's a lot of really cool things about it. But it also had a pretty good win rate in Dominions 4. One of the higher win rate nations. But it got freaking slammed with the nerf bat in Dominions 5. I mean, it got hit with the nerf bat so freaking hard. It's hard for me to even describe it. Yeah. So with that, let's get talking about the nation. Basically, it's a nation of bats, or Zots, as they are called. And it's kind of like at Middle America themed. I don't know if it's based off. I don't think it's off the Aztecs. Maybe it's off something of the Incas or the jungles of the Amazon, whatever tribes lived there. But yeah, so the chassis for bats is kind of interesting. Basically, this is a pretty good look at the chassis. They're very low strength. They're not very strong, but they all fly. They're size 2 instead of Kalem bats, which are size 3, which is important because size 3 sucks if you are like human strength. But they're different than Kalem bats. I mean, than Kalem flyers in that they're like Kalem are basically on par with humans. These guys are weaker than humans and they have bad morale. But they have dark vision, or they're blind. They do echolocation. Which blind is actually kind of cool for a few reasons, and that what's kind of weird is blind in the game is actually a good tag. Like if you're blind dead, like if you had both your eyes taken out, that's bad. But if you're blind, it means that, yeah, darkness or having your eyes taken out or anything doesn't affect you. So blind actually is a good tag in Dominions, which is kind of weird. This actually means you can do some kind of funny things where you can put like eyes of aiming on bats, and the fact that they lose an eye doesn't matter because they're blind. But you still get like, so normally you put an eye of aiming, you get a penalty for losing an eye, and then you get an aiming bonus. But for bats, not so. You get the full precision bonus, and not like that's gonna break the game or strong or anything. But it's kind of an interesting look at the mechanic. Okay, so bats are blind. They have a patrol bonus -1. What this means really is they're not excellent patrollers, but they're still no worse than humans. I think this basically just cancels out the flying bonus they get, because normally flying means you're a better patroller. I don't think they're actually bad patrollers. The math could be slightly off, but I think that's the net effect. So they're blind, they have force survival, they're all stealthy. And stealthy flyers, it's pretty cool, because it means you're gonna be pretty good at raiding and stuff. Pretty hard to catch if you wanna be. And bats tend to be pretty okay against province defense. So they make pretty good raiders. And they're cold-blooded. That's the final trait for the chassis, which means they do not like fighting in the cold. Not at all. So people put Ill Winter up, you just want to hate yourself. Yeah. Anyway. Now, with that, we actually, I think there's a Niflheim in our game, and the sooner they get eliminated, the better. And I actually need to look who plays Niflheim, because fuck them when I'm playing Xibalba. It's gonna be like mission number 1 is killing Niflheim. Because Illwinter is gonna come up. Okay, so let's look at the troops. So they've also got Scorpions. They've got this guy, which is basically just good as a speed bump. He's got pretty low defense. He's gonna basically die the first thing that swings at him. That's basically what this guy is. 1 AP damage. That's still not. I think that still can do 0. So, yeah, it's basically not gonna do shit. This is a speed bump. You can use them for patrolling. I don't know how good they're at patrolling, because patrolling, your strength is based off different things, like, I don't even know what they're all based off of. But all his stats are bad, so whatever it's based off of, he's probably not great at patrolling, but for 1 gold, can you really argue? Giant scorpions are a different bird, though. They have 5 HP, 5 protection, so they're still probably going to die to their first hit. But they do 5 AP damage. Now, 5 AP damage is enough to make it through lightly armored units. Like, if they have 10 protection, it's going to get through, which means it will apply the poison. And you may be like, okay, well, these guys are still shitty. Yes and no, because they also can be buffed with Strength of Giants, and they have extremely high density, because they're size 1. So with Strength of Giants, now you've got a 10 AP damage piercing attack, which actually versus, you know, like let's say you have 20 protection, these guys are going to be able to get through it because, yeah, they're going to be hitting for 9 damage, and basically they're going to be getting a 60% reduction on armor. And so, yeah, what is that, minus 12? You're going to be at 8 armor, effective armor versus 9 damage. So yeah, with Strength of Giants, these guys can actually get through 20 protection. And then apply weak poison. And the attack density of these guys is ridiculous. So, these guys can be used effectively. But I think they kind of need buffs. Like, you really need to be doing Strength of Giants and stuff like that. They're mindless, which is good and bad. They're stealthy, so they can roll with your bats. Wasteland Survival, Animal, Blind. Yeah. Next we have our Zots. So we have a few different flavor of recruitable Zots. The naked guys, I'm not actually sure which of the naked guys. I don't know, I think it's these two. The short lance and the Xibalban warrior. Both of these guys you can get in forts and caves. These guys you might be able to get in caves too. I'll have to check the mod inspector or check in game, but these guys you can get forests. So they recruit anywhere, but these were who you got in Dominions 4. Because in Dominions 4, okay, we have to talk a little bit about the bat nerf. So the bats got nerfed in so many ways coming from 4 to 5. It used to be in Dominions 4, you would crap out just unbelievable numbers of these guys. Like, you could get 100 out of your cap in 1 turn, I think. Something like that. I mean, you would get, it may not be actually 100, but you would get just enormous amounts of them. As much as you had money for. They're 1 resource, you just pooped them out. And they looked shitty, but they got because, you know, they have a 9 damage weapon, because they have shitty strength. But they got a charge bonus, and with enough of these guys, you could just alpha strike and take that charge bonus, and you would kill enough of them, they would run, and then you would pick off the rest of them. And enough of these guys could solve most of your expansion problems, most of your raiding problems. It was, you know, annoying to bring mages to fights, because these guys would just kind of kill them all. They're pretty damn effective. But now we need to talk about why they're not effective anymore. Well, in Dominions 4, before real-time combat, and like real-time quote, air quotes, you would move, like you would run across the screen and move. At the end of your move, you could get a chance to attack, and then it'd be, you know, the next unit's turn, like the enemy's turn, and they would move, and then they would attack, and then you would move, and then you would attack. And what that meant is for bats, they could fly across the screen, they would land, and then they would attack. So they would get first strike when they land. Like, by de facto, flyers got first strike basically in Dom 4. In Dom 5, they do not. What basically happens now is they fly across the map and they land, and then it's basically a coin flip who's gonna attack first, you or the enemy. And what that means is that half of these bats, or not quite, it depends on the ratios of units, but basically there's a very good chance this bat is going to get completely murdered before he gets to get his lance charge in. And why I say there's a 50% chance, it's because basically if anybody swings at him, they're going to kill him. He doesn't have terribly high defense, 9. There's a chance they can miss. But if they hit him, if they swing and they connect, he is dead. Like, he has 0 protection, he's just gonna die. So these guys suck for that reason. The second reason they suck more is, I think that, and this I could be wrong on, I think they got a gold cost increase of 1. I think they used to be 7 and now they're 8, but I could be wrong on that. I could be wrong. I think that was the case in Dominions 4. The next reason they suck is that in Dominions 5, and I think it actually had a lot to do with these bats, but I don't know the full reason. There's a lot of people in the community who do not like that recruitment points were added. It's like an additional weird constraint that nobody... I've never heard anybody say they love it. But anyway, Illwinter was trying to fix a problem, and the only problem that you can think they were trying to fix was, hey, some units, they don't take a lot of resources because they don't have a lot of armor, but we still shouldn't be able to get so many of them per turn. So let's add recruitment points. And I'm not exactly sure what unit they had in mind when they were doing that. Like, I really don't know. The only one that really comes to mind is Zots. Because Zots are the unit that didn't take many resources, and you could just shit out an unbelievably large number of them. And they didn't want to make them more expensive, because Zots suck, and you need a lot of them for them to be good, but they just didn't want to make it so you could get so many of them, but they didn't want to increase resources, because they didn't give them any fucking armor, which is the only thing you need resources for. So they're like, invented recruitment points, I think, just to nerf the Zot. That is my understanding. I could be wrong. Now, what that means is you can no longer get so many. You can get a lot, but with the fact that they made them suck just because flying units don't get first strike anymore, I think it's extremely questionable whether you want to. So that is an in-depth look at why the bats suck now. And as such, they don't really get much play in Dominions 5. Expansion's way harder with them. There's a bunch of things that are harder with them. I mean, God, they're worse against literally everything. They're way worse now. So, anyway, this was the first kick in the nuts for Xibalba of a few. We got, these come in 2 varieties. One with the lance, which is what people would traditionally get. Because if your Zots don't kill them in the first strike, now they're pretty worthless. But they have a second variety, the Obsidian Sword Club. And the thought before was, like, why would you ever get this guy? Because if you can't kill him with the first thing, then you're going to die from the not having armor. Better just kill everybody in the Alpha Strike. Well, now, because you land and you're going to have to trade blows, it's not very clear which one's better, because basically fights aren't going to be as quick. You're not going to have as many Zots to do as big of an Alpha Strike in general, and then, yeah, you'll probably end up swinging more shots, and if you swing more than like 2 or 3 shots, these guys start being better in a lot of cases. So anyway, they come in 2 varieties. They're pretty similar. These guys do more damage over longer periods of time, and these guys do more damage in the Alpha Strike, and then piercing is better in some circumstances than slash. Anyway. Next we have the Xibalban Dart Thrower. Somebody could explain to me at some point, maybe, that these guys are good, but my understanding is these guys are freaking horrible. If you put them on fire, they don't like fly and get in range and fire or do anything cool. They waddle forward and then they shoot at a length of 7. So you have to imagine, like, these guys are slowly waddling forward while you've got the rest of your bats flying in. When they finally get in range, they have 4 ammunition to drop a 7 damage attack. Okay, like, you're like, alright, well, we can buff this up with Strength of Giants or something. Yeah, okay. Now you get to drop 4 11 damage attacks. That's like a short bow attack. But you have to waddle to get in 7 range to do it, and you only get 4 shots. Could be I don't understand it right, and there's some way to use them. They fucking suck. All right. Next, we have the Xibalban Guard. Now, the Xibalban Guard. This was kind of a luxury unit before. So they're more expensive. They're 10 gold. They have the bodyguard trait, which can be kind of cool, because assassins are a thing. But they're basically the Zot, plus they have the guard. They come with the hit many times thing, and then they have Micklin armor. Now, they still have no head protection, so they're still gonna die a lot, but they can take a hit, or two. A lot of them can take a hit. I think they have one better, yeah, they have one better attack skill, and their defense skill might be better too. 10 defense, these guys are 10 defense, no, it's the same. So, one better attack, plus they can take a few hits. These guys, I find, if you can get them, you're not gonna be able to get them in the same numbers that you could get the other folks. But if you can get them, you're gonna get a good bit more mileage out of them. And the thing is, with the addition of the recruitment points, if you're recruitment point limited, these guys cost twice as many recruitment points, which kind of seems like a lot, but they're gonna probably be twice as good. And they don't cost twice as much gold. And that may not be true, and I've still got to test some things with expansion, because I've done some expansion testing, but the game hasn't hasn't started yet, and I've got to figure some more stuff out. Like, I think some of the calculus to figure out is like how many. I think what you want to do is to tap out Xibalban Guard recruitment and then fill up what you can't fill up with Xibalban Guard with these guys. But if your goal is to expand as fast as possible and minimize attrition, on one hand, you want to have as many Zots as you can, because the more Zots you have, the faster you're going to kill things, and the faster you kill things, the less attrition you have. Because Zots are going to be dying every single round of combat until you kill the enemy. Like, there's no such thing as Zots surviving. So then the question is, like, how do we kill them quickly, and you need a lot. So if you only rely on Xibalban Guards, you might not have enough. But for every one of these guys you have, they're going to die every single time they get hit, just about. So the attrition thing, I'm not sure how all the math will play out, but I probably need to try expansion like 3 or 4 more times. Maybe like 10 times, I don't know. We gotta do some testing. Making Xibalba great again will not be easy. But yeah, these guys are okay. They're okay. I would say they would hold up against Kalem pretty well. 11 morale. I think these guys are a little lower, 9. So you don't have to worry about the guards hauling ass. Next we have the Xibalban Scorpion. And these guys are kind of interesting. They're limited recruitment, and I don't actually remember how many you can get. One second, I've got a test game. Let's just pull it up real quick. God, this puts me like off balance seeing the page like that. This is my expansion I just did. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. We got 17 in year 1. Well, yeah, in year 1. So not great, but not horrible. And that was scales, and I've still got other things to figure out. But anyway, what we came to look for is how many of these can we get? 10 per month. So that's another thing I need to test, like how well and against what types of things did these guys expand well against. You're actually getting some decent stuff. Like, they have better attack density. What it could be is that these guys on the front with bats on the back are going to be good. The problem with bats is that, like, when these guys kill something, they'll chase them down and run. When the bats kill something, they literally are gonna, like, get behind them and fight them until every single one is dead. Which is good against players sometimes, but then bad against indies. Like, indies, we want them to run. and we don't really care about killing them all. So, anyway, I'll probably test out expansion with these guys, but yeah, we'll see. How much? Well, they do take a fair amount of recruitment points. So anyway, we'll see about them. In terms of, you know, how can we use them? They're size 3, so it's 2 per tile. They'll take buffs pretty well. They don't have an armor piercing attack, like their little scorpion cousins. So, like, this is armor piercing. So in theory, possible versus, well, I don't know. This death poison's pretty good though. Like, if somebody gets stuck with it, they're dead. So I don't know. There's some circumstances where you may want these guys still, and these guys have better attack density. So I think for like taking down a super combatant, if you can get Strength of Giants on these guys are gonna be better in a lot of circumstances. Or like a thug. The attack density is so wild. But like, if the thug has a Vine Shield, forget about it. These guys are MR3. These guys are MR8, not a ton better. And then we get to the Sun Guard, or the Sun Guide. So the Sun Guide's interesting. He's sacred, he has fire resistance, he's cold-blooded, flying, blind, bodyguard again. Bodyguard with magic weapons, kind of a useful thing. Things like disease demons, manifestation, good to have. They have armor of the sun. No head protection still, so they're still gonna die a fair amount. Until you can buff them at least. But what this is going to give them is they get this trait, and it's not visible here, but it's Sun Awe. And if you steal the sun, which is a spell we get, then we get awe on these guys, which is nice. But I don't find it terribly impactful, because I don't know, I don't think you really get a ton of them. But that's that. Coming up to commanders, well, I guess we'll finish the guide in here rather than go back up to the pretender design screen. Commanders, we have Batab. These guys can be gotten in any forest. Let's see, I think I have some mountains. I don't have any caves though. Yeah. Some people had mentioned maybe I need to sprinkle more caves throughout the map. There's a few, like there's caves here. Like that's a cave. That's a cave. But the caves are kind of on the corner. So I think everybody has access to them because everybody just about can get to a cave. But you're not really guaranteed to have them nearby. So anyway, that's something we'll have to deal with on this map. And then if I get in the cave system, good luck getting me out. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so we were gonna figure out where we can recruit them. So in forest, you can get Batabs. You can also get the shitty Zots. This is without having a fort or anything. In caves, you can also get them. These guys, they're just normal commanders, but they're bats. That's about all there is to say. They're stealthy, so they can lead stealthy raiding squads. They have some armor, which is okay. And they have a shield too, which is kind of nice. It means they're less likely to die to random shit. We have the Ajal, which, you know, notable for being a stealthy preacher. That's valuable. If you had some like Meme Bless, you potentially could lead expansion parties of Sun Guides with them. That's not what we're going to be doing. This guy's 80 leadership, which is pretty good. So, I mean, these guys are good commanders. I think this is like definitely a good troop. They have no armor, so they're going to die pretty easily. We have the Ajal Kanek, and these guys are very solid. They're 120 leadership, so you get that morale bonus, and morale is so important for bats, because their morale sucks. And then being holy too, they can also do Sermon of Courage, so it's really like +3 leadership for bats. The formation stuff isn't as important, it's more the morale. I like to get these with the expansion, but I actually need to test them more because these guys are much more important if you're trying to expand with your shittier troops with 9 morale. If you're using these guards, it might not be as important. But again, that's stuff I have to test more. So anyway, as you tune in to the rest of the series, you'll see what conclusion I came to. But for leading big armies of bats, you're definitely going to want these. Because that morale bonus is just going to be, like, when you have 100 bats, it's just, of course you're going to put them on that guy. They're old. So, yeah, they're going to occasionally get afflicted and die. You have the Xibalba Scorpion Trainer, so he gets Beastmaster +3. And if we do a Scorpion expansion strat, there's a good chance we will use that guy. Though they have decent morale, so you don't really need to. You probably could just use... Are these magic? These are magic. These are not. These do have magic leadership, so they can lead your shittier scorpions. But this guy should be able to lead your big scorpions. So, yeah, that's basically these guys. They're more expensive than the other guys, so if you know, and these guys are better armored, so there's a trade-off. Okay, next we have the Chilean. And this is basically a research mage. He's got Fortune Teller, so, you know, if you take Turmoil, he's good to get. If you take Misfortune, he's good to get. If you take Luck, he's good to get, because with Luck 3, you end up getting a lot of events too. Fortune Teller is just a good trait. It's good to have on a researcher. So, yeah. This guy's just a very solid researcher. What sucks about him is he's not very good out of the lab. He's okay at forging, but in a fight, he's not going to do much. I mean, to do anything, you could throw a Skull Staff on him and then use an Earth Gem, do Earth Power and Skull Staff, he could make some skeletons, but like, that's going to be pretty weak. Earth Death is a pretty shitty cross path for combat mages. Yeah. So, I don't know. I think when I started, I cared more about like research efficiency, and I was like, oh man, this guy's sacred. You know, he's got okay research, Fortune Teller, so good. Now, I think I'm more like, I want stuff that I can use in a pinch. So I think when I played in Dom 4, I got a lot of these guys because there was like, oh, they're the most efficient researcher. And I think now I'm going to be like, well, let's get something I can use in combat if I need to. We'll see, we'll still get some of them. Like we'll probably want some Fortune Tellers and high value provinces and stuff. Next we have the Anakam. And these are probably the most efficient Blood Hunter in the game. They're really cheap. They fly and are stealthy, which is just nice to have. They're not very good troop leaders. They cause unrest, which is a bit of a problem on a Blood Hunter. We don't really like this ability. Because it's basically going to mean that as we patrol it down, we're going to kill more population, which we don't like doing. But we have Blood Searcher +1, so this guy's effectively Blood 2 for the purposes of blood hunting, and then if you put a Sanguine Dowsing Rod on him, he's Blood 3. So that's a pretty damn good Blood Hunter for 70 gold. Yeah, just extremely efficient. Next we have the Akin, and these guys are a fire mage with a random of Earth, Death, or Blood. Now, the Fire Earth are okay forgers for Fire Earth stuff. The Fire Death, they can do some of the Banefire stuff, sort of, but a lot of the Banefire stuff you actually really... I think I've got... No, I don't, okay. I guess Scorpion Beast is an option for the Fire Earth ones. Not totally sure how good those are, but that might be worth it. Fire Death. Banefire Darts. Yeah. Banefire Dart. It's 1 15 damage AP attack. Costs 20 fatigue. Not a huge fan, and then the other good stuff you have to be higher death. So, yeah, I don't think there's a ton of use for these guys. I'd be interested to know more. I mean, Fire 1 can always do some shenanigans with, like, ghettoing to get out a fire elemental, but I don't really think I would be getting many of these. I mean, what's nice about them, they're cheap and they're sacred. So, but I think if you wanted a researcher, I would probably go for these guys. These guys are also bad in the lab, but they're cheaper and they have Fortune Teller. So if you're gonna just commit somebody to being a lab rat, I'd probably get these guys. Okay, next we have the Its, and this is basically the little cousin to the good mage that we get. The good mage is the Camazot. They are slow to recruit. These guys are fast to recruit. They are 120, while the Camazot, because I think this is, we need to be looking at these two as alternative substitutes. So these guys are 120 gold, and their big brothers are 160. These guys are young, but their big brothers are old. These guys start with death 1, these guys start with death 2. In terms of randoms, though, they get the same randoms. So really what it is we're paying 40 more gold for an extra death, and we're getting old age. That's the basic trade. So let's look at the different randoms here. We can get an air random. Now, being air 1, death 1, this means you can do corpse constructs. So that's pretty useful. Air 1, blood 1, I think it may open us up to storm demons. Though you may need one more. Yeah, you're gonna need to be air 2, blood 2. So yeah, it's a little bit out of reach for us. But potentially if you have a booster, the mage turns of these guys certainly aren't terribly important. But yeah, probably not gonna have, really it's corpse constructs. For the death variety, I mean for the earth varieties, the other thing is we can do communions with these guys, they're Sabbaths. And earth is good in Sabbaths, so there's that. Earth death, we already have it on our Chileans. Earth 1, death 1 is a pretty bad path though. Potentially we can do, we can do, these guys summon Ill Earth if we join a communion. And then potentially, this actually is reasonably within reach. We could have these guys binding single Demon Knights, but 15 Blood Slaves is kind of pricey, but Demon Knights are also pretty good. But we have better blood stuff. But anyway, I'm just kind of going through things they can do. But basically, the air varieties are good for corpse constructs. The earth varieties are okay for getting in communions. The death and the blood varieties are the two good varieties. So, death, we now have a death 2 who can do Skelly Spam. So that's obviously pretty useful. And Skelly Spam with blood is nice because you can do reinvigoration. So you can do like 3 Skelly Spams, you fatigue out, you wait a couple turns to unfatigue out, you do reinvigoration, your fatigue's totally wiped out, and then you do another salvo of Skelly Spams. Not that bad. Now, the thing is that if you compare the amount that a Death 2 can get from an AITS to the amount that a Death 3 can get, Death 3s are going to be able to Skelly Spam the shit out of a Death 2, because they're going to get a few, one more per cast, and they're going to get half of the fatigue cost. The other thing is these guys, they're big brothers, the Camazots, all of them are Death 2. So even our not terribly useful cross paths, well, okay, those terribly not useful cross paths, those can still be put to work casting Horde of Skeletons. They're no longer kind of irrelevant. But if we look at the final random, the blood random, these guys we can use to blood hunt, and they're extremely good blood hunters because they're going to be coming in at blood 4 with the Sanguine Dowsing Rod. So The other thing I kind of want to talk about as we think about these two is this guy is slow to recruit. So if you look at how much gold we'll be spending per turn, we're going to be spending 160 gold every 2 turns or 80 gold every turn versus 120. So cranking out these guys, you get more of them. You're probably going to be getting more RP a turn, but it's going to be costing you more as well. So switching over to Camazot's the Big Brother actually is going to save you gold in terms of, like, you know, how much you're spending per turn at a fort. And you will get more combat utility, I think, in general, out of doing Camazots, unless, and this is a very important unless you're using Sabbaths. If you're using Sabbaths, I think these guys are pretty much superior. But if you're doing kind of Lone Ranger stuff, I think these guys are a little better. And because everybody's stealthy, it's really easy to do, like, fairy blood slaves around for Sabbaths and things like that. But, yeah. That is, I think, a pretty decent summary of these guys. And I haven't figured out how I'm going to play. I think when I played Xibalba before, I've been scared of Sabbaths because I didn't really understand communions terribly well. Well, I've got my degree in communions now, so I'm not scared of them. I think what I'm going to do is at the beginning, I'm definitely going to get a lot of Aits, because it's going to be very fort turn efficient. I'm going to be getting twice as many mages than if I get these guys. And getting a ton of these, okay, they're not the super efficient blood hunters like the Anakam, but they're better blood hunters when I get the blood 2 variety, which is good. And I've got to get enough of these guys so I get some death 2 ones. And I also want the air ones to sight search, because I need to get air sight search. The air ones can also make quills. And they're also going to shit out corpse constructs. So I need a lot of these guys at the start. Once I get into, like, the mid game, I have decisions to make. Like, do I want to do... How much do I want to do Sabbath communions? And how much would I rather just default to Camazots, who are pretty good on their own? And I'm not sure the answer here, but we'll figure it out as we go. Playing with my thematic gem gen, which gives you automatic blood slaves, like it's, you know, temporary blood slaves or whatever, it makes setting up communion, like Sabbath communions, much less kind of stressful. Because, like, if you don't use that, then you have to literally have a blood slave on this guy every single time you want to use him in combat, which is annoying. We're still going to not use those items at the beginning, as if we have to kind of muster a skelly spam communion, but anyway. A few more things to say about big boy Camazots. The air randoms here are particularly useful because you can throw a skull staff on them, and now they start hitting some very important stuff, like they can do this for 3 gems, they can do Wailing Winds. They can do Wind of Death for 2 gems. So you can do Wind of Death traps pretty much on the cheap. So yeah, they're pretty good for that. Yeah, I think that's basically covered them. Obviously, we have access to vampires because we have Blood Death. Next, we have our cap-only mage. So these Camazots also you can get everywhere. Both these guys you can get everywhere. Next, we have our cap-only mage, the Akin Kanek. And this guy is pretty good. He, okay, there's some notable things. He's our only access to Earth 2. He also starts with Fire 2. So if we can do the Fire Hat, which the Fire Hat's a little tricky on this nation because you don't really get access to Fire 3. Well, the way to, if you want to get the Fire Hat, you've got to get this guy, you've got to get to Construction 6. You have to make the Fire Death Fire Booster. So now you're at Fire 3. Then you have to be Conjuration 6. And then from Conjuration 6, you can summon a Flame Spirit. You give him the Fire Death Booster. Whoop. Now he can make a Flame Hat. And now he, with the Fire Death Booster, is, you know, he's Fire. And the Flame Hat, he's now Fire 5. So that's kind of how you climb up Fire with these guys. So these guys are sufficient to climb up Fire, but it's a little tricky. And like Conjuration, I don't think is a huge priority for this race. But this guy can do a ton of things. So he's very versatile. He's old, so sorry, buddy. So they tend to get afflicted, and they don't live terribly, terribly long. But yeah, you probably, I don't know if old is hard-coded into them or not. So potentially you could take an unaging bless, which would be also good for these guys. But you can also empower them in blood, or you can do, once you get Construction 6, you probably want to be doing Boots of Youth on all of them that you make. And I think that's probably the better alternative. Okay, so let's talk about what the randoms can do. The Earth randoms with boots, the Earth randoms are your only way to make Earth boots. So you make Earth boots on an Earth random, you're now up to Earth 3. And Earth 3 is the criteria for doing all the big Earth spells, because now you can do Summon Earth Power, your Earth 4, and then you can do Army of Gold and Army of Lead. So that's important for these guys. The other thing that's important is with access to Earth, you're also a nation of flyers, so you can do Earthquake with impunity, and you're one of the few flying nations in the game that can kind of cast Earthquake reasonably easy. So that's pretty damn important as a strategy. These guys actually, this is a nation that gets a fair amount of mileage out of the evocation school. The death varieties, that's kind of a shitty variety. You can do Banefire stuff, but yeah, I don't think I've ever been excited to get the death variety. The blood variety is nice because you can get rid of their old age, and then you can kind of use them as fire mages. Really, the earth variety is the most valuable. There's something to note. You do want some access, and you're going to have plenty of it because you have other people who can random earth, but one thing we didn't talk about is making bloodstones. So with the bloodstone, any one of your earth randoms, really, God, you know, anybody really that has an earth random with boots and a bloodstone, they can now do the big earth stuff. So that is important. And yeah, I'm trying to think what else we would use fire or the blood for. It's kind of okay. I mean, these guys are fine. They're kind of expensive. They tend to die. The main thing I think you get them for is earth access. And yeah, after that, you kind of have decisions to make about how many more you want to get, because you can do more to try to fish for more of the earth 2s. But at some point, it's easier to just make bloodstones. So, and then just use earth 1s. So anyway, that's that. Next we have our big cap only mage. This is the big boy, the Ananqui. And I have not decided how I plan to use this guy. There's a bunch of important stuff about them. They're Death 3, Nature 1, Blood 3, Holy 2. So they're your highest death access. They get a random, and they can get a random in death. Now the death randoms are going to be Death 4, which is extremely high for death. That means with Skull Staff, you're Death 4. At Death 4, you can make the Skull Face, which gets you up to Death 5. So now you have a Death 5 dude. Pretty sick. This also gives you this is your only nature access for the nation. And you potentially can get a nature 2. Now with the nature randoms, you can make the Thistle Mace, and then you can also make Armor of Twisting Thorns. And with the Thistle Mace and an Armor of Twisting Thorns on a nature random, we're up to nature 4, which is now like a very respectable kind of path in nature. If you stumble into like shamans or something, so you can do Moonvine bracelets, you're now up to nature 5. which is pretty sick. Pretty sick. These guys also start combat with 2 beast bats, which makes them very good assassins. They're not an assassin, but you can put black hearts on them, and they get to be pretty damn scary assassins, especially with this high death. Honestly, our whole race makes good assassins because everybody's stealthy, and almost everybody's a blood mage, or has something pretty scary they can do in combat. So yeah, that is this guy. He also, we actually have more to talk about. He auto summons, like Dom summons, beast bats, which are 0 upkeep sacred flying units. So if you have a pretty good bless, beast bats can be pretty damn scary. And I think they have a paralyzing poison in their bite. They're not amazing though. I've thought about, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we went like some strategy where we had a shit ton of Ananqui and we had huge amounts of beast bats and swarm the map in one. I've never done it, I've never seen it, and I've never really heard of it, though I don't think it's impossible. Because in theory, you know, like by turn 60, you could have, if you've been making these guys every turn, you could have a lot of beast bats a turn. But these guys are really expensive. They're really expensive. And you tend to kind of want to use them in combat. And if you use them in combat, eventually they're going to die. So I don't really know about the beast bat strategy. I think it's a nice bonus. How I like to use beast bats, and I assume you still can, though they might have changed because they're an animal, and at some point I think Illwinter made a lot of animals mindless, or like undisciplined. But I used to use them as bodyguards. I don't know if that's still possible. So anyway, they're also useful just for auto summoning sacreds, which are okay. They're also demons. Nobody else in your lineup is a demon, so that's significant. And they cause unrest. Let's look at who all causes unrest. These guys cause unrest. These guys do not. These guys do not. These guys do not. These guys do not. These guys do. These guys do not. So, yeah. You know, there is an argument, I think, to be made to skip the Anakam. And to just do Aits. Which I think is what I'm leaning towards right now. And, you know, haters are gonna hate. But we're gonna get a lot of Death 2s if we make a lot of Aits. And we'll be relying less on these guys who get old and die. And we'll be doing, but then we'll be relying more on communions, Sabbath communions, which kind of suck, but I'm kind of down with that. So yeah, the final thing to cover with these guys is that the fire randoms, or if you get a death random and you empower in fire, they're your way to cast. Yeah, I think these are by far your best way to cast Theft of the Sun, which is one of our globals. It's unique to Xibalba, and basically it's going to make the world covered in darkness. It's not going to be the same darkness as if you cast the darkness spell. It's more like the weaker cave darkness. So it's, instead of the -6 to all your stats, it's -3. So there's still value to put up darkness in a fight, but this means there's going to be light darkness everywhere. So, pretty good. It also decreases income in the world by 30%, which generally is going to favor blood nations who use population without really needing to go through income. If you control a bunch of caves, it's going to be good for you because it doesn't affect caves and seas. So it's also good for oceans. So if you have a really strong ocean power in your game, you might not want to put this up. But it also gives you a ton of fire gems and astral. And the idea is that you have stolen the sun and you're harvesting gems from it, which I think is fucking awesome. To cast it though, it's a bit of a bitch. You need to be Death 6, Fire 3. And if we come back and look at our guy, you can see we're very clearly not Death 6, Fire 3. If we put 2 of our boosters on him, like we do our death hat and a skull and the skull staff, he gets up to death 6. I'm sorry, to death 5. But then his fire is only 1 if we went for the fire random. And then we could put the fire booster on him, which gets him up to fire 1. To fire 2 and death 5. We've still got to get up a whole nother one. So either you put like a robe of the Magi on or a ring of sorcery, or you do some empowering. Yeah. So if you want to cast Theft of the Sun, you either take it on your god, or you have to kind of start planning pretty far in advance to get that up. Now, we get some useful spells. I'm going to go pull up Mod Inspector real quick. Okay, and we've got Mod Inspector pulled up here. So, we've got Summon Jaguars and Conjuration. This gives us Sacred Jaguars, but you need Nature Holy. And the only way to get Nature Holy is really with Anonkwi. So your Anonkwi can summon Jaguars. And it's okay, it's pretty Mage turn efficient. So if you have an Anonkwi sitting around who has access to Nature 2, and you're in need of 17 Sacreds, these guys, you can do worse. Because with 2 pretty high damage attacks and being Sacred, especially if you have Achille Bless, these guys could be the difference between you winning and losing a fight. So, this is definitely viable. Let's do it by school. Next we have the Sacred Scorpion. So Sacred Scorpions, basically we get this guy, which, let's compare him to the normal Scorpion you get. Bind Scorpion Beast. So here is the normal Scorpion Beast, and here is the Sacred Scorpion. So they use different gems. So the one that Xibalba gets uses 2 Earth gems, and it's Earth Death as a cross path. And the Scorpion Beast is Earth Fire and uses 2 Fire gems. Now, if we compare the stats of them, the Sacred Scorpion is better in kind of every way. It's 4 higher HP, it's 1 more protection, its attack is 1 better, its defense is the same, its magic resistance is excellent, whereas these guys have super shitty magic resistance. Yeah. And then, otherwise, they're basically the same, except this guy is holy. But yeah, you can see that these guys are also undisciplined. Yeah. So, yeah, that is the Sacred Scorpion. And so, 1 higher strength, too. But in theory, you could potentially be casting both of them, because you've got access to both. They're both pretty low in research, they're Conjuration 3, so if you're really worried about getting rushed, you could go for like a Conjuration strategy where you shit out a bunch of Scorpions. So I would say that's a thing we could do. Let's go back and look at the rest of our spells. So, Early Age Xibalba. Okay, so that was the Jaguars. Now we get the Balam. These are 4 unique summons we get. One is... they can also change shape. They've got... each of them has 3 shapes. And they share the paths. I don't know all the difference between all the shapes, and I'm not really going to go and find out exactly, but basically... yeah, I'm not totally sure the difference. This is going to be the Jaguar is going to be the best fighting form, but then these guys are probably better at casting, and then if they get hit, they're going to escalate in form until they get to this. And certainly these guys are going to be better just in the sense that they can use items, and this guy can't. So anyway, you can get Balam. They're expensive though, so it's 60 nature gems to get one of these guys. But you get, you know, decent air access. You don't really have another way of getting an air 2 terribly easily. So So yeah, each of these are different. The cross paths we get are, we get this one, which is air, nature, blood. We get this one, which is water, nature, blood. We get this one, which is fire, nature, blood. And then we get this one, which is death, nature, blood. So those are all the varieties. I think these are a little overpriced, but I think if you need them, or if you have if you're just, you know, dying under the weight of all your nature gems, you could get some. I mean, okay, the other thing that's important is you may want a couple just because they are going to be your highest nature mages. And potentially, they could be like really, if you really needed a high nature mage, like you want to do Beast Mastery or something, you could definitely consider getting one of these guys. Because with Armor of Twisting Thorns, it goes up to 5. With a Thistle Mace, it goes up to 6. With Moonvine Bracelet, it goes up to 7. You know, anyway, you can see they can be very, very powerful nature mages if you need one. So if you need a powerful nature mage, you know, these are pretty good. But if you're just doing it for a nature mage, you could also get an Ivy King. But then, I mean, these guys are better than Ivy Kings. So I don't know, like if I was gonna summon an Ivy King, I would probably pony up the extra gems and get a Balam. But if I were gonna get a Fairy Queen, I might not. Right? Like if I needed the air path, I'd probably just be like, oh, I'll get a Fairy Queen. But if I just wanted nature and it was like this or an Ivy King, I'd probably get that. But it would depend. It would depend. Next we have the Shock. Or the Shaek. And these guys also come in 4 varieties. They've got a air, water, an air, water, nature, a fire, air, water, and a water and an air, water, death. So if we look at these, we actually do get some interesting cross paths. So first of all, just having an air 4 is pretty sick. We need to be air 4 to cast it though, but this can help us climb up higher into air if we really need to. Because you might get air 4 with gear, but then getting this guy, you can put the gear on him and then you'll be really high in air. Now each of these guys also cast Storm, which if you're using your Ananqui, you may, or your bats, you may not want. So these guys in some ways are like kind of counter synergistic with your Nation. But potentially you could also be in the Storm Demon business, because you do have Death and Blood on the same chassis. It would probably take some items and some empowerment, but it is definitely something that you could do. And if you're in the Storm Demon business, then these guys are obviously going to be pretty good. You know, importantly, this gives us Death Water. Well, basically, all these guys are going to give us water access, which is something we kind of lack as a nation. And that, you know, Death Water is a good cross path to have. Death Air is obviously really good. We already have it, but we don't have it this high. Fire Water is also a really good cross path for like Rune Smashers and stuff like that. So it could be worth fishing if you have a ton of air gems. Air gems are one of the things too that at least I find, if you're an Air Nation, you just eat through air gems like candy. If you're not an Air Nation, sometimes it can be hard to find a use for all your air gems in the late game. Like, I mean, you can always find a use, but sometimes you feel like it's not the best use. So I can see myself summoning these in the late game. Especially if I decide I want a Storm Demon army or two. Okay, Theft of the Sun. We already talked about this one. Super good global. I'm gonna come back to the soul things in a minute. We're gonna go to blood real quick. Okay, so here are our beast bats. Okay, they're not undisciplined, that's good. They're not animals actually, they're demons. So, stealthy, blind, and then they have venomous fangs, which does paralyzing poison damage. Combat stats are kind of okay. Nothing to write home about, but nothing horrible. They don't have much protection. So you kind of do want to buff them with protection if you're going to use them in combat. You can bind them, getting 3 for 8 blood slaves. If it's all you have and you're getting rushed, it may be okay, but generally I would probably avoid casting that and just get them from Ananqui if I'm going to get them. We have Break the First Soul. Oh. Did I not? Oh, I forgot. Okay, these are the souls in the... We have Bind Jaguar Fiend, so this is Blood 4. Once you get to Blood 4, any of your fire blood guys, which... I'm trying to think. I think that might be... Yeah, I think that's probably actually the main reason you get these guys, because I don't think any of our... Yeah, with these guys don't come in fire randoms. So to do the Anonkwi, you either are going to get some of these guys with the randoms, and they can do Anonkwi. These guys with the fire randoms can do Anonkwi, and then these guys with the blood randoms can do it. The problem with getting these guys is the death fire suck and the earth fire suck. So I think you're really only getting these guys to kind of do blind jaguar fiends, and you get some ocelotls. And yeah, I mean, these guys are obviously sick. They're really, really good. The weaknesses of these guys, and this will come into our pretender design, is that they don't have magic weapons. That is their main weakness. And then being a demon is kind of a blessing and a curse, because later you get cleansing waters and stuff. But anyway, they're a very good unit. They have really high strength. They have good attack and defense. They're fast. They're flying. They're size 3 with 3 attacks. What do you need me to tell you? They're really good. Then we have Contact Anonkwi. So if we wanted to, we could get these guys from this instead of from our spell. And I think these are different unit IDs. I'll actually come over here and check. At least the same unit ID? No, they're different. Now the difference here is that these guys, one of these costs upkeep and the other doesn't. One of these is Holy 2 and the other doesn't. So basically the cap only Anonquis are going to be higher in death. And then they're also going to have a small chance of a 10% random. These guys are not higher in death. But yeah. But they don't cost any upkeep. So, I mean, obviously, which of these is better? I mean, these guys are better in the sense of they're not costing you upkeep, which is what really ends up mattering a lot. Does it have... Yeah, I think these guys also give you the free spawn beast bats. So, another strategy, if you were like, well, I'm not really sure I'm bought into the Aussies, is you could be like, okay, we're not going to go for Aussies, we're going to go for just shitting out an Anonkwi. And then each Anonkwi is going to give us upkeep-free bat. So this is like an upkeep-free... Or not this. Let's go back to the spells. This is like an upkeep-free vicious cycle of ponage. And I like those sorts of things. But ocelotls are really good. And like you really need excuses not to use ocelotls, I think. What I expect we'll do is we will use ocelotls to keep us in a situation where we are very strong and we can win our engagements. And then any additional blood slaves I need above that, I'll probably put into this so that I can kind of explode in the later mid-game. Yeah. And then next we have this one, which is just so much more efficient. Reign of Jaguars is so much better than Blind Jaguar Fiends. So like if you compare the two spells, this one you're spending... Obviously it's going to be a lot harder to cast, but it's 1 mage turn and you get 14 versus 3. So you get way more. And then these guys cost about 5 each. But then these guys cost like 3.5 each. So you're getting a pretty big discount per Aussie. And it's more mage turn efficient. So pretty good. But if you have a copious supply of blood fire ones, it's not necessarily like, oh my god, we have to run for Reign of Jaguars, because this is still pretty efficient. So I think that's it. I think we've kind of covered the main spells. These we're not going to talk about all of them. I'll just cover a couple of them, which actually the blood ones, they're kind of the most important, I think. Okay, there's a couple we'll cover. Some of these souls suck, and then some of them are really good. Break the first soul. This is like an anti-super combatant spell. It is ridiculous. It basically is going to give them people bleed, and then potentially disease them, and it's going to make them take fatigue and health damage until they die. It's pretty far casting range, but if you put your guy on advance and cast spell, he's a Blood 1 mage. He doesn't have any blood slaves. This is what he's probably going to cast. So, pretty good if you're getting rushed by, like, super combatants. Gift of the First Soul. It's a blood spell that grants you regeneration. Like, that's pretty damn good. Yeah. The other ones which are worth mentioning are Gift of the Third Soul. This gives you 2 reinvigoration. Gift of the Fourth Soul I don't particularly care for. It gives you luck. It's a weird because it's death, and undead don't get luck. So, I mean, all your guys can cast it now, like, because, you know, you have death dudes. So you can use it to back propagate onto a communion, and which is kind of the main use for Gift of the Third Soul too. Gift of the Third Soul gives you blunt resistance, which is pretty shitty in my opinion, because you can just cast like Temper Flesh or something with Earth 1. Like if you're Earth 1, just cast Temper Flesh. Why would you ever cast this? There's like a small niche circumstance where for whatever reason you've decided as Xibalba to go Thaumaturgy before you go something else, like Alt 4. Which is a bit odd, but I guess we are going to cover all of them. We have Break the Third Soul, which inflicts fatigue, so potentially could be good on super versus super combatants. We have Break the Fourth Soul, which is Curse and Decay. This actually is really good against super combatants. And then we have, I'm not sure, sometimes this says Curse Decay. What does it actually say in the description? I think this is just Curse. I don't think it actually does Decay. I mean, it's not terribly hard to test. Have I researched it? Well, we have to research it and take a look bit. We'll find out in game. And then Break Second Soul, Cause Limp. Also good against super combatants. All these things are basically like anti-super combatant, which I think is actually really good for Xibalba to have. Because one of the things they really suffer against is getting rushed by thugs. And with like, obviously if it's good against super combatants, it's pretty good against thugs. So having anti-thug, anti-super combatant things available early is important. But yeah, let's do closing thoughts and let's close this out. So, how, you know, what is this nation? It is a nation that is both very quick and agile, and it can raid you and sneak away. It can very quickly get very powerful by taking a bunch of your land really quickly by raiding. It also can struggle a lot in a straight up fight, especially early. So it's like this very kind of like shadow boxy nation early. As you shift into the mid game, they get a bunch of other things which come online, like you potentially can have Earthquake, you potentially can have Skelly Spam, you can have Skelly Spam Communions, you start having Ozelotls mixed up in here. Oh, I don't think oh. Yeah, and these guys hit kind of hard. So you start having some scary units which are gonna, you know, like these really strong units which are gonna be really good against bats, they're gonna suck against Aussies. So you start having more of these counters come into play where maybe they're not really like a hide in the shadows nation anymore. And then Skelly Spam's really good when you do it behind a bunch of PD. And then Earthquake can be really good against human nation. So you start having all these things pop up in the mid game. And by the late game, they've got like really powerful blood mechanics, which are going to keep them alive. So, and then we're not going to get into all the little deceptive tricks they can do, but this is a nation that just is jam-packed full of sneaky trickery they can do. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun to play. If I make it through turn 30 in good shape, I think I've got a good chance at the game. But this is a nation, especially, like I'm not going to go Awake Expander, and I'm not going to go Titan. This is a nation I think Going a dormant Titan is really viable. And yeah. We're gonna have to handle Diplo really carefully. If we go imprisoned, we're gonna have this big window where we're really vulnerable. And I think it's probably the wrong build. Like, it's probably not optimal. It's greedy though. So I don't know how we're gonna deal with it, but we have to get a few critical research targets under our belt before we get rushed by somebody. And we're going to be very careful about getting into wars, and we're going to have to do diplomacy really well. And if we do that, we've got a shot. If we don't, we may be fucked. But wish us luck. Take care.